next question I want to ask you is, so when we're talking about this NBA season coming up, right? Actually, I kind of want to go back a little bit to how ChrisBeCappinn like came about, right? So did you come out the break like, all right, I'm gonna start sharing my picks? You know what I'm saying? You said you've been, gambling for like about 2-3 years now. Did you come right out like, okay, I'm gonna start sharing my picks on Twitter and everything like that? Did you like when was the moment where you felt like, okay, I'm good enough to start sharing my picks? Or was that even a question for you? Because I know there's some people out there, like especially when Twitter Spaces like became a thing, because that's relatively new. I mean, not even relatively, it's super new. You know what I'm saying? Before I found you and some other guys on the gambling side of Twitter, I would just see rooms of like 6-7 people just like sharing picks, like just talking, and I would hop in those rooms and it's like we're just talking. You know what I'm saying? And it's not like anybody's special or anything. It's just these are just things that we're looking at. These are just things that. It's like, being in a fucking game chat room playing Call of Duty or some shit. You know what I'm saying? So were you just coming out the break just like sharing pics, or did you get to a certain point where it's like, okay, I know what I'm doing. Now I want to start this ChrisBeCappinn persona and like be regarded as somebody that like is one of those guys in this space?
Man, that's a loaded question too, bro. But this is what I'll say. I'll say initially, nah, I definitely wasn't sharing pics. When I first started. For me, I think, a lot of people gamble on sports recreationally, right? Like it's something that they just, they're watching the game, they want to have some action on it, right? I don't think of myself as a recreational gambler. I think about myself as a sharp bettor, right? Like I'm not just going to play something just because I want to have some action in on the game and I'm putting $5 or $10 or $20 or $25 on the game, right? Like, or a player prop. I think about, wanting to be sharp because as my following grew, I understand that people was actually putting their money on this, right? Like I'm never in the business of just like, oh, let me just put something out because, like I need to have some content out, or let me just host a space because, I always host spaces, right? If I don't do the research, if I don't feel like I have an edge, then I don't make spaces, right? And I think we kind of talked about this before, a little bit before, Meg, but I think before we got started, I think like, even with the preseason, right? I held a Twitter space for the preseason, but it wasn't to give out picks, right? Because we talked about how volatile the preseason is. Even though I had found some success already in the preseason, it was to help the community as far as like what resources I'm using so that you can make your own informed decisions, right? Like how do I know who's going to be starting? How do I know, how many minutes these guys are going to be playing? How do I know whether this team is going to win or not, right? Like, let's look at, all of these different angles. And then if we find an edge, you can take it, right? But it was more so just
like
kind
of preseason for the NBA season.
There you go.
Preseason for the NBA gambling season.
That's exactly what it is, right? Like, use these resources now because this will be helpful for you. But as the season starts, it might be you can use some of these, but it might be a different, version of resources, or it might be different resources as well. So initially, I wasn't sharing plays at all. Initially, I was trying to find the resources. I was trying to figure out, like, pick the brains and, like, some of the sharp gamblers, some of the sharp sports bettors, some of these guys who had Discords and had their own shows on YouTube. I was like, yo, if they can do it, guess what? I can do it too, right? So I need to figure out, like, how they're finding their edge, right? And then initially, I was just talking about this yesterday with one of my boys. Initially, when I first started the Twitter Spaces last year, because the Twitter Spaces, like you said, they're relatively new, even though it feels like they're old because I did so many already, right? Every single day, the grind starts.
And the concept of Spaces, like Clubhouse was out for a minute. Mm-hmm. There's been audio group chat rooms for sure.
Absolutely. So when I first started, the crazy thing is I was just sharing information. That's how I grew, right? The ChrisBeCappinn brand came from just sharing information. Like you said, Meg, I'm real big on the analytics. I'm real big on the data. I'm real big on finding enough information to find the actual edge. And if I don't have enough, I'm not going to make a play. I'm not going to force anything, right? So a big part of it was like, yo, all right, the Cleveland Cavaliers are playing against the Minnesota Timberwolves tonight. And based on what I know about the Cleveland Cavaliers, I know that they're a top team, a top 5 defense. I know that they are really good at rebounding with Evan Mobley and Jared Allen down there. I know Darius Garland is playing good since why can't I think of his name? Not Levert, the guy that they just traded to Utah. Colin Sexton. I know that he's playing good since Colin Sexton went down, and I know that the Timberwolves is going to be without A, B, and C player tonight. They're also on the second night of a back-to-back. I like Cleveland in this matchup, right? So it's like just going through and figuring out if I have enough of an edge to actually make that bet. That's how I got started, right? And people would just pop in
early.